friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time, and I'm here for my weekly this and that video. And if you're new, what these videos are about, it can change from week to week, but they're basically a weekly vlog giving you updates on projects I've started, leading you back to some old videos on how to do the various things I'm talking about, letting you know of videos to come, as well as answering questions and so much more. So let's get to the topics of today. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is the subject of homeschooling. I'd like to link you back to at least a couple of different videos that we've done. One is at least maybe about 3 years old that Patrick and I did on homeschooling. Even though those days are long behind us, we just kind of shared our own experiences and what we did. But with the way things are going, especially in the public school systems, I highly recommend people look more seriously into that, because I believe strongly, and I know people are doing that, that even if both parents are working outside the home, knowing how little actual one-on-one bookwork time it takes to teach your children at home, you can do this. You can make it work if it's something you really want to do. And I think that most people really need to be looking into it. Regardless of your religious standing, I believe it's going to be for most people, it's going to be the best option, especially now with the way things are going. So I'll put the links to those videos down below, and especially read through comments where people share their own experiences, not just those who are able to stay at home or run their business from home like I was always able to do, but even those that work outside the home. I mean, you think about it, you're working outside the home, and then you got to come home, you're sending your kids to public school, and then you got to come home and still work for 2 hours or more to help them with their homework. Well, that same amount of time can be put into actually homeschooling. So, and it's far easier than people realize it is. So anyway, I just want to bring that up because I just want people to know that those videos are out there, that it can be done. You just got to really link up with people and get that encouragement. I think that's what most parents need, is just that encouragement and support, because most parents think, whether they didn't finish high school or they are PhDs, most parents will feel inadequate at being able to teach their kids from home and think that the only people that can do it right are those with teaching degrees. And that's not true. So just know that, be encouraged, especially if you're really considering it and you're afraid. We all have those fears before we get started. Okay, so let's move on to some of the other topics. Now, in a recent video this last week that I published about the wedding arch that Patrick had made. So Justin and Marlene did officially get married in the courthouse a couple weeks ago, but we still have the big wedding ceremony coming up in August. So I still got some finishing up to do on Marlene's dress, in between working on some custom orders, which again, I'm not going to be taking any more custom orders, like specific requests, until after the wedding ceremony is over with and we get all that business behind us. But anyway, people came into that video and were like, oh, what are you going to use the arch for afterwards? Well, I do already have plans. I know people were offering out suggestions. I'm not positive where it's going to go yet. I initially thought out front and have it being either on the deck. Then I realized 7 feet is a little too wide to have it actually on the deck, where you can come up onto the deck. So maybe in front of the deck, or maybe even on the back deck as kind of an entryway where I can grow my honeysuckle or some other climbing things, beans and so on it. And I think that will look really nice. So I might even put it somewhere else, but yes, it's definitely going to be used as a garden trellis one way or the other. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about are the strawberries. So I posted a photo. I don't think in that photo in the community section that I had any red strawberries on there when I posted the photo, but it was like the very next day I go out there and suddenly I have red strawberries. So I have strawberries ripening up, and here's what I do, because strawberries, even with as many plants as I have, you just don't get a whole lot ripe at the same time, but you got to get them off there quickly if you want to keep the slugs and other bugs from chewing them up, or they can just go ripe very quickly and spoil on you. So Though we'll eat some fresh. Mostly what I like to do with strawberries is use them in other things, whether it be strawberry rhubarb pie or strawberry applesauce. I'll make different berry applesauces because the berries add a little more flavor to the applesauce and sweetness. So I've done raspberry applesauce, blackberry applesauce, blueberry applesauce, and the baby loves that stuff. Jackson just loves my berry applesauces, so I'm hoping to make a lot more this year, even though I have quite a bit back in the food storage because we didn't eat through it enough. But anyway, what I do until I have enough strawberries I'm ready to use them is I simply chop them up and put them in a mason jar and then stick them in the freezer, and I'll keep pulling that jar out and add the strawberries to it until it's topped off, and then allow it to freeze, and then put a tight fitting lid like a canning lid and band on there instead of just the plastic lid like I usually put on there until I have the jar full. And then I can use them anytime through the year to make whatever I want. For example, like if I want to make a strawberry applesauce, well, the apples aren't going to be ready until September or even early October. So having those strawberries frozen up and ready to go, I just pull them out, let them thaw, throw them in there with the apples, and it's very simple. Same thing for making any kind of pie. I do freeze up a bunch of rhubarb as well for the same purpose. If I want to make a strawberry rhubarb pie, I don't have to make them all in the summertime. I can just pull the frozen rhubarb and strawberries out and then make a pie that way. Or, you know, and of course there's jams. We don't really like plain strawberry jam. Usually when it comes to jams, we like strawberry mixed with something. So strawberry pineapple actually is a really good combination. So speaking of the rhubarb, I have a video coming out later about using honey and fermenting. And so that's a specific FAQ. And yes, you can use honey to ferment with. I know I've mentioned it in several videos, but I needed a separate video that I could link people to when they come in and ask that question. So in the video, I had, how full this is, I had taken some dehydrated rhubarb. I just had a little bit. It was only in the bottom of a pint jar. There was about that full. And since I decided I wasn't going to dehydrate up any more rhubarb for this year because I have plenty dehydrated, plenty frozen, I decided to go ahead and use that to get my fermentation starter going. So I poured the whole thing into the jar with the honey and the water, and I did actually use this to start back there. You'll see that is going to be a mango wine. That's a mango nectar is what it is. And I used this fermentation starter to do that. And so anyway, one of the reasons I'm bringing this up, besides throwing that out there, is I wanted you to see how that little amount of dehydrated rhubarb in a couple of days of sitting in here, not cooking it or anything, the rhubarb expanded back to its original size. Now you don't see a lot of the red in the rhubarb anymore because it's all in the liquid, but yeah, you can just, if you're dehydrating your rhubarb and you know you're going to make something with it, if you don't really want to cook it necessarily, just sitting it in cold water and letting it sit for a day or two, it will rehydrate up just fine. And that is without blanching the rhubarb first. I'll go ahead and put the video link where I talked about why I do not blanch anything. I don't dehydrate potatoes, but if I ever decided to, I would blanch those. That's the one thing for sure you need to blanch. But most things you really do not need to blanch, and especially not rhubarb, even though it will say that. It is messy and it's a waste of time. It's so much easier just to chop the rhubarb up, put it on your trays, dehydrate it, and it rehydrates great. It's not tough. I actually took one of these out and ate it just to see. It's great. Now, the other thing I was going to talk about was the chicory. So right here I have chicory root. It's the first root that I've dug up. Now, it doesn't look like a lot because what I found was the main taproot of the chicory was very, very tough. I couldn't cut it, and it was mostly hollow in the middle. Now, it might not have been super healthy. I don't know if that's common for chicory. We'll see, because I have another chicory to dig up. The reason I dug this one up, it was out front in my little skinny, narrow herb garden strip that I have on the south side of the house. When I started these chicory plants last year, I had no idea how massive they would get. I have chicory plants out there. They're at least 7 feet right now, and they look like they're not going to stop growing. I know the one out front that this one came from was that tall, and I needed to get it out there because we kept getting these windstorms and it would blow the whole thing over, and it just looked like a big old mess. And it was shading out some of my smaller herbs like my yarrow, my calendula that I had out there, and I needed to get it out of there. So that's why I went ahead and dug that one up. The main reason I started growing chicory is I'd learned about it in Amy Fuell's book on the natural chicken keeping. And a couple years ago, I had a chicken that got really sick. I let her go through the whole brooding phase, even though we don't have a rooster. I just thought, well, this is natural. Well, the problem with brooding hens is that they stay in that dark little box all day long and might come out once a day, and they can get sickly. So and this chicken is one that's more likely to get sick anyway. And when she came out the tail end of it, she was very, very sick. And by the way, I pull my chickens out when they go broody. I won't let Dixie go broody anymore because she was the one that got real sick. But Gertie goes broody a lot. So I'll let her go ahead and go broody, but I pull her out twice a day, once in the morning, once in the afternoon, to make sure she's getting food, water, some sunlight, and some exercise. So anyway, Dixie got real sick, and I did a video just on this. I didn't have Chicory on hand, but I did manage to nurse her back to health with the other things I had on hand. So I recommend you check that video out. But going through Amy's book to try to figure out what was wrong with her, one of the herbs that she had recommended was Hickory Root in particular, which I did not have at the time. Now the leaves are edible too. It is related to the dandelion, so the leaves are going to have that bitterness to it that are going to be good for digestion as well as the root. Now a lot of people do roast and make coffee out of chicory. I have yet to do it, but I might try this. I might try it just to see what I think. Now I didn't roast this. I just cut it up and dehydrated it. But I just did it yesterday and it dehydrated it beautifully. I couldn't believe how quickly it dehydrated. So I have another chicory plant or two I might dig out of there because, again, they're just so huge, and one of them is completely overshadowing one of my echinacеas, and I need that echinacea, so I think I'm going to be digging that one up. All right, another thing I wanted to mention was that some other questions I got, those who saw Patrick's video from a couple weeks before where he did that little shelving unit. I'm going to be shooting a video. It's more about just that one particular work area and how I make it work for me and use it for editing videos, doing my book work, and packing up orders and getting them out the door. But here's a picture of that area so you can see he made that little stool for me, which is basically my table. And then you can see that shelving, and then he also built another little set of shelves that goes on top of that cabinet, and that is to store some of the papers. So they're letters, they're the blank labels that I use to print off for the shipping labels on, and just all kinds of stuff. So I'll be going into more detail about that on the video I plan to shoot today, but we'll publish probably in about a month from now for those who are curious. But yes, his whole setup, all the things he did there, I'll be talking about that in that video and explaining what he did to help get me set up better. We got a long HDMI cable that we could hook up to the television, so now I can sit a long ways away. I don't have to wear the reading glasses, and I do all my video editing that way, and it's really taken a lot of the strain off my eyes. So for those of you who have to do a lot of computer work, it doesn't have to be video editing, just whatever. You have to spend a lot of time on the computer. This could be an option for you. So I'll be talking about that more in that video. And kind of showing you some of the other things that are set up in there. Okay, so some of the things I got dehydrating this week. The new thing to the dehydrator, just as of the day before yesterday, I think it was, is the marshmallow leaves. So once my marshmallow gets to be about 4 feet tall, I start cutting out whole stalks, or at least cutting them way down, and then taking the leaves. I want to start doing this before it flowers, because once it flowers, just like with a lot of your herbs, the leaves will start getting smaller and not put out as many of them. So I like to keep a lot of those leaves going through because I use the leaves more than any other part of the plant, including the root. Though I do get a lot of marshmallow root and dry it up, obviously I have to dig it up to get the marshmallow root, but I have lots of marshmallow plants, and I always have new ones coming up now because now my marshmallows are so well established that they self-seed, and I get baby marshmallow plants coming up all over the place. I love it. It's one of my favorite herbs. So it's a very mild tasting herb that can go well in salads, teas. And my main purpose though these days is it goes in my infused oil for my skin cream. So because it's one of my best sellers on my store, it's one of the herbs I try to get a lot of it put up, because I have to have lots of infused oil going in order to keep up on making the skin creams for the store. If it was just me, this would be well more than enough. But anyway, I plan on getting at least 2 full quart jars of the leaves dried up. And then if the flowers start coming in and I'm still trying to fill up the jars, I had the flowers in there too. Flowers are great in salads, and they also have a very mild flavor, a little bit on the sweeter side. That will go well in salads, add a little color and interest, and a little bit of benefits. But of course, like with a lot of your plants where you're using the root, you're going to find most of your medicinal benefits in the root, but the leaves have a lot. I mean, you can tell just when you eat a leaf that it definitely is going to be something that's good for helping to soothe your throat and help with coughs. So though a lot of that's in the root, you can find it in the leaves too. And then a couple other garden related things I wanted to talk about. I will eventually be doing more in-depth garden tours. I just don't want to do that yet, so probably later in the summer. But my gooseberry out front, remember how I was talking about I got to watch for those little green caterpillars? I kept watching. Then we had like a week or so of really bad weather and I wasn't paying attention. Those little green caterpillars, I don't know what they are. I have no idea. They came out of nowhere and totally decimated the leaves on my gooseberry plant. Thankfully, they leave the berries intact. It's just full of berries. Most berries I've seen yet on that red gooseberry. It's a very delicious gooseberry. It turns dark red. It doesn't stay green like your standard gooseberry. And I love the flavor. I like it better than the green gooseberries. So it's out there on a pot on my deck. And other than the caterpillars, just eating the heck out of them leaves, the plant is doing good, really putting out a lot of berries, even though it's been in that pot for maybe this is the 4th year that we're in now. I did spray it down with my bug spray, my homemade bug spray, but it was just too late by the time I got to it. And so Patrick and I just kept going out there and picking those caterpillars off and squishing them, because that's the best way to get rid of them and get rid of them quickly once it gets to that point. Now, I don't know what they are. They're about that long. They're real small and they're bright green, and the chickens won't eat them at all. They won't touch them. I keep trying to throw them out there, and one actually picked one up and then immediately dropped it. So I don't know if they're bitter, they taste bad, but chickens know. They just know when something's wrong. So we just have to kill them and get rid of them. And now the gooseberry's starting to get some new growth, new leaf growth, because I know it still needs those leaves in order to really feed those berries. It's got to have those leaves. So yeah, that was really frustrating, but thankfully I didn't lose my crop of berries. And so they're starting to turn red, and probably in a couple weeks I'll be picking them, or less. And just like the strawberries. Now the blueberries, this is what's crazy. Usually my blueberries are the first berry that ripens. Now it looks like the plants are finally starting to look better, but I tell you, this weird cold weather we've had for the past 2 years has really taken a toll on the blueberries. And they're an early blueberry. And so normally by the end of May, early June, I'm picking blueberries. They're still green. I see still no blue berries on those plants, but thankfully they're starting to look healthy again. And so that does tell me that most of their problem isn't so much being in the pot, though I still think maybe I might want to consider getting them out of the pots. I think most of the problem has just been these weird cold snaps we've been getting for the past 2 springs. But now that we're starting to get into more steady warm weather, I should start seeing some blue come on my berries. But this had the same effect on, I think that's why none of my corn germinated, except for those red ones I started in the greenhouse, which I did move to the back garden, and then it got cold and the whole plants turn red. They're still alive and they'll make it, but whenever you see your plants turn red like that, that usually means they got too cold. That will happen with calendula, that will happen with corn. There's certain other plants that will do that too, where the leaves will start to turn red if it gets too cold. Like it's starting to grow because of the warm weather, then it suddenly turns cold. That's what happens. That's what that means. And I've only picked this up just from experience, just from watching my plants. But the tomatoes are still doing great. The tomatoes in the greenhouse. Now I did plant some out in the main garden, but they're not doing anything. And they're about this big, where the ones in the greenhouse are about, some of them are about 4 feet tall now, some are 3 feet tall, depends on the variety, because the certain ones grow taller and faster than the other ones. And I think that's it for my this and that for the week. So next week I'll be covering some more topics and giving you a few more garden updates there. Oh, and don't forget to check out the videos in the description box down below that I'll be linking to. Sometimes I link to ones that I don't even think to mention in the video. All right, well, thanks for watching. Take care and God bless.